So as I say, this will be recorded, and I'll create a section on our training page on our website at gdsestimating.com. You can watch this again. And I plan on doing these hopefully twice a month and with different topics. And the same way you heard about this one, you can find out about upcoming webinars that will cover different topics. And I'm going to try and stick with the more beginning, novice level material at first, and then as we go through that, we'll move into the more advanced functions and parts of the program. So again, you'll be able to ask questions at the end at 11:30. I want to try and keep these short so it doesn't interfere with people's productivity and your workday and all that. So hopefully that works out for everyone, and you can let us know in the survey what your thoughts are. So today's webinar is covering the parts list, and you should all be able to see my screen on the right here. And if anyone can't, hopefully you can send a question or raise your hand. And those are tools that you can use in your little control panel for the GoToWebinar software that should be on your screen. And so if you don't all have, I'm using our new beta version, 15.2.1. Don't worry about this if you don't have it on your machine, because the parts list information is all the same. So in our program, once you get in, we want to click on parts list here in the menu tree. So parts list is basically any catalog in our software has a list of parts, and typically it's an entire parts list for a manufacturer. We're looking at Coral Architectural right now. And so their entire parts list is about 1,221 parts. It includes all their door parts, all their hardware, all their stock links, all their gasket material, everything they pretty much sell. So the standard sort, the first thing to know about the parts list is sorting it. So you can sort it by all these different fields here. And part number is a pretty typical way to sort. Now the main thing that and as soon as you change it, like let's say the description, it'll resort the list, and it'll remember that sort when you go back to this screen, when you go leave the parts list and come back to it. So for now, let's leave it on part number, because that's a pretty typical sort. So the first thing we're going to cover is this filter bar here at the top. And the filter bar is a key for any list that you see like this in our software. The only exception is the optimizer window. And in this filter bar, I'm able to actually limit what I see in this parts list. So some of you might have already done this, but we've actually made some changes to this in the recent year or so, which allows us to do a substring, what we call a substring sort. So if I type in the letter A, it's actually only going to show me any part number that contains an A. So it doesn't begin with an A, it just has an A in it. So if I need to sort for something other than, like let's see if there's some 72 parts. So these are probably door frames or doors that are 72 inches. And then it has to be contiguous though. It can't be like space, something else. So I have to type consecutive numbers or letters. So if I want all the 7284 doors, but I only want door frames, I'm going to go over to the part type column and type in door frame. So now it's limiting what I'm seeing, and you can see the count down here at the bottom. The count reflects how many parts are being shown in this window. So it went from 1,221, I think it was, to 52 that now meet this criteria. They begin with, or they contain 7284, and they contain the door F, which is door frame. Now the other thing that you can use to sort is, and we know these aren't stock lengths because there's no stock length for these parts, so these are definitely door frames. Now if I wanted to clear this, let's say I want to go back to the entire list, that's what clear filter does. So when I clear filter, I'm back to the 1221, and I can start a new sort. So if I wanted to see for this particular catalog, some of the manufacturers give us the page number for the parts that they give us, some don't. So between a catalog code, a page number, a part type, even a description, you're usually able to sort this to a pretty small list of information that's more workable than an entire list of parts. So let's see. If I wanted to see everything that's on page 24, I can simply put 24 here. So there's only 20 parts in this catalog that are on page 24 that we see. And then if I wanted to see all the right-handed parts on page 24, I can just put an RH in description, and it's picking up only those that contain the RH. So this is a kind of a quick example, but it's a very powerful tool because it basically gets you down to the information you need rather than having to sift through a big long list. Some of the catalogs have 3,500 parts or more, so if you need to work with specific parts, this is how you do it. Now this is the key for the next part of this little lesson. Change a group of parts. So this is important if you need to update something. Like let's say I'm going to clear the filter and I'm going to go to all the stock length parts. So if I want to see what stock length parts there are, I can begin with the number 2. So there's 179 parts that have a stock length beginning with 2. So it's 200 something inches long. Now if I know that I want to use an extra inch of this stock material as a usable cut, to be used in the optimization, I guess, in our software, let's say I want to change this 253 to 254 because I know that's my usable length. So I'm going to first limit this list to the 253 because I don't want to just leave it at 2 because now I'm looking at 253s, 258s, 289s, whatever. So I don't want to change any of those. And that's exactly what will happen if I hit change a group of parts right now, it's going to change 179 parts. Just like if I hit clear filter, I'm looking at the 1,221 parts. If I hit change a group of parts right now, I'm going to change 1,221 parts. So I don't want to do that. So let's go back here. I'm going to do the 253 for the stock length. That was 11 parts. And I'm going to change those to 254. And now we actually put a warning in here not too long ago that tells you if you try and change something, it's going to change everything that you see. So using this filter bar is definitely key for this. Now, you can change multiple things, but what we want to change is the stock length right now. So, and notice you can also zero it out. Like if there were some door parts that were door frames or door leaves that have stock lengths in them, you could limit the list to those using the filter bar, and then just check this box, and it would zero out the stock length. Let's say they accidentally had a stock length in them. So you can do things like that with this little tool here. But right now, all we're going to do is add an inch. So I'm going to say 254 will be the new stock length value for these parts that we're looking at, these 11 parts. So when I hit update, now it shows me the 254. Now this 253 filter is wrong now, but that's okay. So we can clear that. And now I can go to see how many 254 stock length parts there are, and there's actually 12. There was one kind of miscellaneous one there that had a 254. So that's an example of how you change kind of a batch of parts. And you saw the other options. I can actually backspace something as well as hitting clear filter. So let's see. We can just click on this but not do anything. So I can hit OK on the warning. I could always close without doing anything. It's not going to execute an update. So something like package quantity, you'll notice that that's not in this little update tool. So we try to pick things that are pretty common to update, which the multiplier is a big one. So let's say these multipliers are all 1 right now. So let's do that. We're going to limit the list. And if we need to change all our extrusions to a different multiplier, we're just going to limit the list to extrusions by typing as much as we need to show just those. There's 183 extrusion parts in this Coral catalog. So now I want to change those multipliers. I'm going to hit change a group of parts. I'm going to remember the warning. I'm going to double check, okay, I'm only going to change 183. And now I'm going to put my new multiplier value in. So let's say it's a 0.55. And this is just going to change what we're looking at, the extrusions. So I'm going to update that. Now it's updated all 183 parts. I'm going to go over here and go to door parts. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. The the door parts, if I type door just like that, I'm going to actually see door and door frame parts. Now what we can do is just go ahead and change them all to something, and if door frames need to be a different multiplier, we can go back and change just the door frame parts. So let's do that. We're going to change all the door parts to a 0.5, let's say. I'm going to update those. So now there's 850 door parts that are both door frame and door. But now if I just want to change the door frame parts, I'm going to keep typing here and spell out, I can go ahead and spell out the whole thing, the door frame parts. So now I'm going to change the group. Now there's 481, so that's about half, or a little more. Now let's say I want those to be 0.52, just something different. So now it's only going to update the door frame parts because that's what I'm looking at. So I'm going to clear the filter, and now we can kind of review what we've done. We've got door parts at 0.5, door frame parts at 0.52. We can even scroll down here to extrusions, wherever they may be. Oops, there's some extrusions, and our extrusions are 0.55. So notice how there's a couple, instead of extrusion, it says stock. So let's find those. Stock, there's only one. So instead of doing change a group of parts, it's easy enough for me just to go in here and say 0.55, I think that was. And then I can actually click on here and change this part type so they're consistent and make that extrusion also. And that brings us to almost to the next thing. Let's do one more little example here. So let's clear that out. See, notice how that time it didn't actually bring the whole list back, so let's say clear filter. Now there was one other type of part that we didn't set the multiplier for. It was miscellaneous. So MISC. And this is probably just any kind of hardware. Notice how there's no stock lengths, so it can be screws, handles, setting blocks, whatever. You can actually go through, like, let's see how this says push-pull in this catalog. We can type in push, and now I can change these to door hardware. So let's say the new part type is door hardware. I'm going to change that. And then I can change the multiplier at the same time, so that's going to be a 0.52. I can update that. So I changed in one shot, I changed the 0.52 multiplier and door hardware for that. Now let's go back to clear filter, go back to miscellaneous. There's 86 parts that are miscellaneous, so let's go ahead and set that multiplier. Change the group of parts. Remember the warning. And then let's call these a 0.48. So I'm updating all that for my miscellaneous. So this is it's real simple, real easy. As long as you're filtering to what you need to look at, you can change multipliers, stock length, part type. If you really want to get specific with part type, you can do that. These guys abbreviate a lot of their stuff here. So a jig I would call miscellaneous. Now bottom rail is not really miscellaneous, so if we wanted to fix that, and the reason this happens is because a lot of catalogs used to only have 2 multipliers. It was either stock lengths or everything else, or sometimes there were 3, but now a lot of manufacturers are getting a little more creative with their pricing, so they're coming out with more multipliers. But if I wanted to fix bottom, anything that had bottom in it, right? And I could do this, and I could call these top and bottom mullion cover, so that's different. So these are all door related, and I need to think of something that's, and notice how they have a D108 or a D109, so let's change, you can also double click on a line and it'll open it up to edit that particular part. So let's go ahead here, and I'm going to change it to, say, D. Let's just see what happens when we type in D10. So then it's basically showing us all the door stuff. So a lot of times the description, and I could have done this too, if I would have said BTM and then beginning with the part number D, that does the same thing. So you can get creative on what you're using to filter down the list. But in this case, I'm going to change these these are actually door, they're not extrusions, they're door parts, so they're pre-cut door parts. So I would call those, we've got our little list here we can pick from. I would just call them door. So I know those, it goes to door. So it's definitely not miscellaneous, it's more door related than anything. So that leads us to those part types. If we want to get more specific or even add to the part types, we can go over here to part utilities. I'm going to clear the filter to go back to our full list. So part utilities. Copy of parts, pretty simple, but let's do what I was just talking about, the list of part types. We can edit and add to that list. So notice how we didn't see a anything that said door part. So we have door leaf, door lock, door hinge, door hardware, handle, frame, closure, door, and then we could call it door piece, door part. But the way to add is you scroll all the way down to the bottom. This little asterisk means that's a new one you can add. So we're going to call it door, and there's no spaces here. You just want to type in one word. I'm just going to say door part. And I like to do the capital just because it stands out on the second word. So I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to close that. A lot of times in these lists, I like to click off of the row. Notice how there's a little pencil there. That's showing that I edited that row. And to make sure that it's saved, I'm actually going to click off of that, and then it gets rid of that pencil. So then I know for sure it's been saved. So I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to go back, and let's try and find those same parts that we were looking for. So it was bottom and D. And I don't remember those coming up. Those are hardware. Okay. And those can be door hardware. So let's say D1. Oh, no, that's not D1. DM. So now I'm limited to these parts. So I want to change these now to that new category that I created. So instead of door, I'm going to go down my list and look for door part. And there it is. So basically, this helps you. The reason I'm doing these part types is because it helps us find a part quicker and easier than if we're searching for it and they all say miscellaneous and we're having to know what the description is. So now in the future I can look, I want to see all my door parts. And if I've changed all the door parts to this type of part, then it's easy to find. So that's the reason we're doing that. And the program does look at these types of things, but if it doesn't find the correct part type, it's going to basically guess and pick one. But we try and make sure that all catalogs have parts with part types so that you're able to go in and limit your list or look and find, look for and find parts that you need to. So, okay, so that's that. Let's clear filter. Now let's go back to copy part. It's pretty straightforward. If you need to, let's say there's a part, but you only want to change, one character. So if we find a part, these are pretty long, I guess. So a pretty long part number, it's a very similar part, but let's say it's left-handed or something. So I actually want to copy that part to, and then all it's going to do to a new part, and all it's going to do is put the word copy in front. So if I want to edit that, let's say get into this full screen edit. So I can either double-click over here. I like to do it over in this column. I can double-click there, or I could have clicked the edit button down here at the bottom. So now I'm going to get rid of the word copy, and then I'm just going to change something. And this is obviously if if it's your own part or if it's, let's say the manufacturer sent out a addendum to their parts list or something and you can just add it real easily. That way you don't have to update your catalog later, then you can just copy or add your own part yourself. So, and then I can just add like a RH to it, or I'm sorry, LH. So then down here in the description, I would change that so it knows it's a different description. Maybe the price is the exact same, the multiplier, all that same part type. So that's the reason I copied it. Just it was easy to change just a couple of things. Now I've got another part in there that I can use in one of my framing systems or a door frame or anything. So that's what that's for. Okay, so edit finish colors. The finish colors usually come from the manufacturer because they give us pricing for certain finishes. So we'll go ahead and put these in. Now, if you wanted to, say, rename a finish color, then I could call it, let's say the white finish here was actually both white and medium bronze, or let's say dark bronze. Then I could say dark bronze. So you can actually, edit the name just so that it reflects some different colors if it's really the same price. If you wanted to go through and add a whole new finish color and put some pricing in for it, that would be a little tough because there's so many parts. But if it were a small catalog that you created for your own company or something like that, you could add colors and prices that way. So if I close that now it might not reflect that until I close and get back in. Let's try that. So yeah, so now I can make that wider. I guess it cuts it off, but but that's what it's going to show us, the change that I made. So, all right, so hardware lists, that's something that we've added, gosh, a few years ago. And what it is, it's another database that contains basically a list of Access Hardware supply parts. They gave us their list of parts, and they are actually a wholesaler that sells a bunch of different manufacturer parts. And it's all hardware. So, so you are actually able to manipulate this. It has the same change group of parts, edit finish names. It's very much like the parts list that we were just looking at behind us here. And then it's actually just hardware. So from different suppliers, you can change the supplier name, you can add different parts, you can delete parts and put your own in there, whatever you want to do. So what this list is for is at the final parts report. I'm going to close this now. At the final parts report, let's say I've gotten my job done with the final parts report. I can click Add Hardware here, and then that same list comes up. So then I can pick, I'm using my filter bar. Let's say there's an ACS part that I'm not too familiar with all this hardware, but let's say it's the 11 something 5. No, there's nothing. So like I say, I don't really know these parts. There's an 08. So if it's one of these parts that I need, I'm going to select that and say Add. And basically I've added a hardware part from another manufacturer. So this is a list that's available no matter what catalog you're selecting. So it's kind of like your glass table. So this hardware feature, we had a couple customers asking for it. We threw it in there and to see what would happen. But a few people use it, a few people don't. A lot of people don't. But it's something that's there if you need it. So you can populate that list with your own stuff. You can delete ones you don't need, add ones you want, and then add these parts to your final part summary. And they're from different manufacturers than the company you're bidding with. And that's something you can add to your bid. So that's how that works. Now, the one thing I wanted to cover for sure is the difference between job parts and master parts. So the master parts list is the one on the menu here that says parts list. So this only gets touched or changed. The changes for this are only happening here for the master. So anything I change here is going to get saved, and every time you open the master list, it'll be there. But when you create a job, like this, even this elevation here, all these parts have been copied to a place just for this job. So to get to those parts, obviously those are the parts that show up in your parts list and in the optimizer. But to get to those parts, I can actually go to the jobs window, and I can go here to current job update utilities, and then I can say edit job part info. So now this is going to look familiar, but it's really only the parts for this job. Now sometimes if you have a job and you bid one framing system type and then you've changed it to another framing system type, it's going to show all those parts for both framing systems. Now the program should know not to use any of the unnecessary parts in the bid or in the optimization, but the parts will still show up here. And the reason is if you mix framing systems, we want to make sure that no parts are removed that you'll be needing. So we kind of thought it was safer just to leave them there than to start removing parts when a framing system's deleted, because what if there's another elevation that needs that framing system? So it got a little confusing and complicated, but if you ever see parts in here that you think, oh, they're not part of that framing system, then it might have been from an old framing system that you changed from. So now if you wanted to change pricing, let's say, or even stock lengths just for this job, these are all 289. I can actually go through and filter down to my 289 stock length, change this, and I can make these 280. Oops. So I'm going to make these 280 now because there was some special run or something they did for me, let's say. Now I'm going to close that. So I've updated just those. You can see by clearing the filter, it only affected the extrusions. We could have actually filtered by extrusion too, because that part type was only our stock lengths. Now I'm going to close that. And any changes that are made in there, it's going to want to redraw the elevations, which is fine. There's only one elevation, I believe, in this job. So, yeah. So now we're going to go to the optimizer. And what we'll have to do to reflect that change, you see that it still says 289, both here and here. I need to get elevation parts. So I'm going to get elevation parts, and now you'll see that it's changed to 280. So if I would have tried to make that 280 change in the master parts list, the job's not going to know anything about it. So the job has its own discrete copy of the parts from the catalog, from the master catalog. And everything you do to this job doesn't affect the master, and anything you do to the master doesn't affect this job. So now I can hit optimize, and it's going to use my 280 stock lengths to give me the cuts for that size stock length. So that's important. So if you wanted to change anything with parts for a given job and not have it reflect the in the master parts list, then that's what you would do. You go here, you go to Edit Job Part Info. It's going to show you the parts just for this job. You can change the description. You could even change the part number, and it's going to just put in a different part number because it knows the record that you're touching, but it's just reading what part number that record has. So pricing is the same thing. You can change the pricing here, but you can always change it in the final parts report as well. So so that's what the job parts does. It keeps the job separate from the master parts list. So now there's one exception here. Oh no, there's one other thing. I want to go back to. Let's go ahead and redraw that. So now I'm going to go back to here under the update utilities. There's one new feature that we added that is called Update Parts for Current Job. So I click that. This utility will update the current job parts with information from the master parts list. So let's say you went through, after this job was created, you went through, I'm going to say no right now. You went through and changed some parts in the master parts list. You know, just you updated pricing, you updated part types, descriptions, whatever. But that job was already sitting there. As long as the part number is the same, then let me think about that. No, there's actually a part ID that's associated to this row, which you can't see. So as long as you don't delete the part and then add a new one, then you can update the parts for the job that you were working on. So if I went in here and I changed something, whether it's the price, description, part type, multiplier, any of that, let's say I changed a bunch of parts, I could actually go into my job window. I could go to the job utilities, and I could say update parts for current job. So what this is going to do, if I say yes, all it's doing is it's going and matching up whatever parts you're using for this job. It's looking back to the master parts list and pulling all the information from the master parts list. So it's saying, okay, let's update everything in this job with what you got in the master parts list. So that was another tool that we added based on a customer's desires at the time, and it made sense. So, because he likes to go in and do a bunch of batch updates to his parts list, and then he opens up a job that was either quoted or still bidding, and he wants to make sure those changes are reflected in that job. That's how you do it. So the one catch is going the other direction. If you make a bunch of changes in a job, it's not going to update the master parts list. So I think that's why this customer asked for this feature. So if you do plan on, especially if it's several jobs that need to be updated, go ahead and make your changes in the parts list first, and then go in here and click on each job, and then you can update parts for current jobs. So whatever job you've selected with the little arrow here, you can update. So you can go down the list and update those from the master. So I think that pretty much covers it. I think we're pretty good on time, and I would like, if you guys do have any questions, you could either do the raise your hand thing or type your questions in to the program here. And if anyone doesn't know how to do that, maybe raise your hand and I'll try and help you. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll be here for a little while. And as I say, when this is over, there's going to be a little survey, and you can tell us if it was too short, too long, not enough content, whatever. So you guys can fill me in.